Well, I didn't know that.
We might. I was trying to think. Wait. I totally missed that on the whole. That's the whole thing.
So in this interview with Hoda Kotb, Jada Pinkett Smith is going through some stuff about her relationship with Will Smith. And my question for you for the comment section is she telling the truth? Or is she dealing with some kind of cognitive dissonance? We're going to look at all those things right here, right now. Let's get going.
If you find another great love, or if Will finds another great love.
There's no finding another great love, and I think that's the point. It's like we are in a place now that we are in a deep healing space.
All right, two things right away. One is that Hoda starts going after the obvious, which is the love relationship, and it immediately throws Jada into internal dialogue. You'll notice that her eyes go down and to the left. Her head tilts down, her eyes go to the left.
It's like we are in a place now that
we know that in general, when people's eyes cast down to the left, it's usually internal voice. You're hearing a conversation that you're having with yourself. If it's down to the right, it's usually just deep feelings. Some people do them the other way around, but with her, it's definitely emotion when her eyes go down to the left. So her eyes immediately go down left, and she starts with what are called stop gestures. Whenever you take your hand and you go like this, it's a stop gesture.
we are in a place now that we are in a deep healing space.
It's regulating the flow of the conversation.
And we are really concentrating on healing the relationship between us.
So it may not be the divorce on paper anymore.
You'll notice as soon as she gets done with the regulators, we're trying to heal the relationship between us. All of a sudden she gets emotional. We can tell because something happens that people generally cannot control. That's the chin boss muscle. When that begins to flex and when it begins to contract, it's usually followed up by either tears or some type of an emotional outburst, or it generally means that the person is triggering deep emotion in themselves. And whenever she gets to an emotional state like this and she smiles, her chin boss muscle contracts.
In us.
So it may not be the divorce on paper anymore.
There's no divorce on paper.
I mean, not on paper. There might not be a divorce in theory anymore.
Yeah, no, we really have been working hard.
Oh.
This is called eyes closed talking. This happens for a myriad of reasons, so it's all dependent on the circumstance. Anybody that tells you this means this all the time, they're wrong. Don't listen to that. Everything is dependent on the person, their traits, their personality, as well as the circumstance. So when you see an eyes closed talking like this, it can be many things. It can be you're trying to block everything out so that you get the answer correct. We do this a lot when we are taking tests. You think like this, you close your eyes and you try to come up with an answer. And sometimes people do it out of arrogance. When you talk to somebody that maybe you're wondering if you've given enough for a charity, and someone who's a little bit arrogant says, oh yeah, well I give a lot to charity. Usually that's because of they're coming from a place of superiority or arrogance. I don't see that here. I see her getting her story straight and thinking through what she's already rehearsed. That's another reason out of many that we close our eyes when we talk. So whenever you look at somebody whose eyes are closed when they're talking, it can mean about a dozen different things. Depends on the context.
Really have been working hard.
Oh.
See?
Okay. Well, I didn't know that.
I was trying to think. I totally missed that on the whole. That's the whole thing.
So wait, just so I'm 100% clear. You were divorced, not on paper, but now we might be a point where we're back together.
We are working very hard at bringing our relationship together.
Back to a marriage again.
Back to a life partnership. Yes.
This is called avoidance or distancing language. She is not willing to define her relationship by the words that Hoda is using, so she uses what's called avoidant or distancing language. So when Hoda tries to pin her down, so is the relationship healed? Are you back together? Jada knows that it's not exactly what Hoda would expect by the words that she's using, so she refuses to allow that to be defined by those words, and she distances and uses other words to define the state of her relationship. Watch what happens next.
Bringing our relationship together.
Notice that together. This is elongating a syllable or a vowel. People do this when they're trying to draw attention to what they're trying to say. Jada here is drawing attention to her definition of her relationship. We're trying to bring it back together.
Bringing our relationship together.
Back to a marriage again.
Back to a life partnership. Yes.
And notice that here she completely, again, uses distancing and avoidant language. Jada will not use the term marriage because it calls up a traditional set of rules that they're not actually playing by. And you'll see more of that in just a minute.
Here's the thing about
Tell me.
husband-wife marriage for me, my healing process. I came into that with very specific ideas, right?
Here you're going to see her work through what we call cognitive dissonance. And what this means is that your actions do not match the values that are inside of you. So when you find yourself doing something you didn't think you would ever do, maybe you said you would never do, or it doesn't agree with what your lifestyle looks like it should be, you run into what's called cognitive dissonance. It means your brain cannot accept that you're doing things that go against its values. And because here Jada seems to be struggling with the internal idea of marriage means this, but we're living like this. So what do you do when you have cognitive dissonance? Well, one, you either stop doing it, which she's not going to do, or two, you resolve the dissonance by covering for the problem, which means that you find ways to justify the behavior. That's what she's doing here. She's covering up what traditional marriage might be by trying to justify her actions using different language. She tries to justify this by saying, I came into this relationship with very specific ideas. Then she says, right?
I came into that with very specific ideas, right?
This is a request for approval. She knows through the cognitive dissonance that she is dealing with that Hoda might also think this is strange. So she says, right?
Right.
She's looking for approval. It's actually called a verbal request for approval.
He can't be this perfect, idealized husband.
Yes, of course.
I have to be able to accept him for the human that he is.
She needs to accept him for the human that he is. In other words, it doesn't fit the box of what everyone else would think the relationship called a marriage should be. Again, this is justification. She's using language to distance herself from the traditional idea of marriage and then also to redefine it and deal with her cognitive dissonance.
He accepts me for the human that I am, and we want to love each other there.
Okay, so you might like live in the same house and have the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you notice those three things right there? So Hoda says, so you might live in the same house.
So you might like live in the same house.
Inferring by that this may start to fit into the more traditional mold of marriage. And what does Jada do? First thing that happens is the chin boss.
So you might like live in the same house and have the same.
She gets emotional. She may want that. We don't know. But the chin boss gives it away that it hits an emotional trigger for her. And then immediately after the chin boss hits, her eyes go down left.
And have the same.
Because it's emotional. It's internal voice. She's talking to herself before she says something.
And have the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the last thing she says is, yeah, with her eyes closed.
Yeah.
We already talked about that before. It can mean a myriad of things. And how does Hoda end it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this puts us in the situation that I started with. Is Jada telling the truth? Do you think she's trying to cover something up? Do you think that she's struggling with trying to redefine what her quote-unquote marriage relationship is? What do you think? Put your thoughts in the comment section. I'd be curious to read that. And if you are still with me, click on one of these other videos and I will see you very soon in the next video.